crews used a power boat to push that plane down the river, and they brought it here, guided it right into this boat ramp area where they're working to pull it out. Now they have attached ropes to this plane, and those ropes are attached to a building behind us so that they can get it out of the water. They put rafts under each of the wings to pull it down the river, and it arrived here at this boat landing just about half an hour ago. Now, first responders say the pilot and passenger described this as a soft landing on the Catawba River this morning. As soon as the plane hit the water, it flipped upside down. The pilot and passenger got themselves out and swam to the banks, waiting for emergency crews. Can you tell us one more time why you guys didn't flip it over at the point of impact location, why you waited and flipped it over here?
Mainly for safety.
And you actually just had that power boat as a backup in case you weren't able, but you said the current wasn't bad, so you guys were actually able to walk it and guide it down the river.
That's correct, yeah.
And as soon as we got here, that video that we just played, that's what we saw. We saw that ambulance rushing out of here. Then we saw multiple cop cars coming through here. And you can see CMPD posted up right in front of Dillard's. That's where everything seems to be concentrated. There are multiple ambulances. We saw medics, mass casualty bus. And that worker who was inside the mall, he works at a kiosk downstairs, tells me that he's heard about 4 gunshots and then just a crowd rushing towards him. He could not tell if the shots came from upstairs or downstairs in the mall. Julian and Jason, I just got to a vantage point where I can see this plane right there on the runway, and then you can see the at least two emergency crew workers to the left on the wing to the left side there. And then in the distance, I see some emergency vehicles that are here, and they're responding to this with their flashing lights. In the distance there, you probably saw that plane as it's landing here at the airport. So there is still it's still a day with activity going on, as we understand this Delta plane has landed without its landing gear. Elections officials tell us that turnout countywide has been pretty normal compared with a midterm, but this place, it is hopping. There are some Republican challengers hoping to flip those seats, turn them red tonight. Let's start off with a couple of races that we're watching across Mecklenburg County, and that includes District 1 for the Mecklenburg County Commissioner's race. That's between Republican political newcomer Ross Monks versus his opponent, and that's Democrat incumbent Elaine Powell. And that seat covers North Mecklenburg County. That's one of the races that could turn Republican tonight. Another one we're watching closely is District 5, and that is the South Charlotte area. And that's going to be a rematch between incumbent Democrat Laura Meyer and Matthew Reitnauer. Now, he's a Republican. He is not a newcomer, though. A tree took out some power lines here on Oswald Amity Road in Troutman. I'm going to go to show you the scene right now. These crews working very hard to get power restored to this area. And you can see in the distance there, that white cord, there is a tree that came down, crashed onto that, and really that tree is now kind of holding up that cable there. And if you look up above, you see the guy in the bucket truck, and there's another bucket truck that just went up. And we have been working and watching as he works very strategically to string those power lines back on, get those cables back into place. And I just got an update from the city of Kannapolis just minutes ago. They tell me that the Red Cross is assisting families with temporary shelter if they need it and they can't stay with another family member. But the city of Kannapolis says right now this mobile home park and the damage done to it by the flooding makes it unsafe for people to stay in their homes. We are out here on Pit Row Live, where all of the action is for tonight's race. Now, the Charlotte Motor Speedway has 2 types of track dryers, and one of them basically has a jet engine. So that's the kind of force that they are using out here to get the track dry.
And when they go to school, I'm assuming that they're safe in school. But the real reality that I've come to realize is that they're not.
Andrea Higgins asked her 5-year-old daughter the same question she asks every day after school.
I asked her, how's your day? And she goes on to say, that I was beaten up. So I was like, beaten up? Who beat you up? What happened?
She says her kindergartner started to tell her much more, including graphic details about how one boy student held her down and another boy sexually assaulted her on the bus ride from school to her after-school care.
When I found that out, I was livid.
The nightmare continued. The next day, Andrea took her daughter to the hospital, calling both the school, Croft Community, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police from the emergency room.
Any little girl, let alone my own, I would feel, some type of way. But this is my baby.
Andrea says the school put a plan in place to respond, but it did not include taking the boys off the bus. Andrea says the school did not even tell the bus driver about the situation, and the bus driver sat her daughter right next to her accused attacker.
Putting someone next to her or even seeing someone that you feel has violated you is not right.
Andrea says she met with the principal, the guidance counselor, and administration from Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools over the phone and in person, each time emphasizing the need to separate her daughter from her accused attackers.
She told me in no uncertain terms, innocent until proven guilty. That's what she said. So they can't penalize those boys without an investigation.
CMPD is investigating.
I don't trust the school system. I don't.
Andrea says while police look into what happened, CMS needs to protect her little girl.
The school district has failed her. And I wonder how many other children have they failed in this manner.
Now, I reached out to Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools around 11:30 today. Almost immediately, they wrote me back and said they're working on a response. But now, 5.5 hours later, we still have heard nothing else. Back to you, Alicia.
Robin, this story, horrific details. You and I both are moms, have younger kids. I can't imagine this is a parent's nightmare. We do know that a lot of these school buses have cameras on them. What do we know about the cameras on this particular bus?
Alicia, the mom of the 5-year-old girl tells me that the CMPD detective told her the cameras on that bus were broken. So, of course, I asked CMS about that as well, but we have not yet heard back from them. So I will be sure to give you an update just as soon as I hear back from CMS. This group of workers is tied to their job because Charlotte is their home. Almost all of them grew up here along Beatty's Ford Road. One of them sees this as his calling because of a promise he made from prison.
I was a good person.
We all walk different paths.
You know what I mean? That's real. I was a good person.
Coming from many places.
I come from a broken household.
Juan Hall doesn't mind you knowing he went down the wrong road.
I promised myself and to the Lord, I prayed when I was incarcerated, if I get a second chance, I was going to do right. You know what I mean?
Juan's walk of redemption is along the very road where he did drugs decades ago, Beatty's Ford Road, a place where the odds are against kids.
A lot of people can talk to a kid but never been through their struggle.
Juan is part of a group born out of violence, including a deadly day in June 2020 when more than 180 rounds were fired off at close to 400 people during a block party. 4 people were killed.
That was terrible. It was terrible.
The Beatty's Ford 4, Jamak Hassel, Christopher Gleaton, Kelly Miller, and Darion Stevenson. Their names memorialized, their killers still out there.
So that would mean a whole lot if they could solve that case.
But a lot of people need to hear your story.
Juan's group, Alternatives to Violence, is working.
We just, keep walking, talking to people, of course.
Connecting the community.
I've been able to get a couple of employees through them too. So, and then they'll come in and say, anybody needing help?
They're made up of outreach workers and violence interrupters, sometimes called to crime scenes.
We were off, and then we got the phone call from someone else in the community.
They show up to disrupt.
Sometimes you'll hear something, sometimes you won't.
They have an ear to the people.
You have to be tied to these communities.
And an eye on the streets.
We get a second chance to do right.
To do right by business owners like Bernetta Powell. She gets emotional just talking about growing up here and making it.
Makes you feel good. I mean, it hits me right here. It does.
One day, they might get justice for the Beatty's Ford 4. Even if they don't.
Like I tell people, I ain't get arrested. I got rescued from myself.
Juan has already kept people from taking the path he once took.
And see, you make yourself a better person. And once you do that, you can live.
Now, if you're wondering if this program is working, UNC Charlotte's Urban Institute studied the Alternatives to Violence program in its first year. Researchers found a sharp drop in gun-related homicides here along the Beatty's Ford Road corridor compared with other neighborhoods that do not have this program. Next week, Charlotte City staff will ask Charlotte City Council to approve funding for 2 more Alternatives to Violence programs, one along West Boulevard and the other on Nations Ford Road. I'm live on Beatty's Ford Road. Robin Kanady, Queen City News. It is pretty wild. Deputies say the man turned this gas station, the aisles here, into a runway. He tried on one of these ponchos and several dresses, but it's when he got undressed that things got pretty crazy. A man walking around a gas station in a dress is only the beginning of what deputies began to uncover.
Was then complaining about snakes in his clothes.
He was obsessed with telling customers and the clerk at the Market Express in Indian Land that snakes were in his pants. He even shakes his pants, trying to get the serpents away, and at one point is maybe trying to dance with them.
Goes into the bathroom at the store and is in there for a little bit of time and then calls out to the clerk, bring something to cover me up. She grabbed a sundress off the rack and took it over toward the bathroom.
The clerk then came face to face with more than just his face.
The door is wide open and he's standing there butt naked. So she hands the sundress in and he walks out still butt naked. It seems sort of amusing, but I'm sure it wasn't very amusing to the lone store employee who was there.
He then gets dressed and continues to talk about the snakes with customers. Oh, and deputies say he got away with that dress.
He walked out of the store with a sundress that fit him pretty well, but he didn't pay for it.
Now, the man also left behind his clothes, his shoes, and his watch. One of the workers here tells me that one of the customers recognized that man from the pictures that deputies put out, and that person gave his name to the Lancaster County Sheriff's Office. I'm live in Indian Land. Robin Kanady, Queen City News.
Quite an eventful day in Indian Land for sure. All right, Robin, thank you.